Good morning, welcome to our Live Talk program. This is Lorgo here, your host on Revive Reform Radio, doing our Live Talk program covering natural health on this year Wednesday morning, Rise and Shine. And this morning here, I'm looking at a topic, major risk factors for gun violence, major risk factors for gun violence. So welcome again to the talk program. Hopefully you had a blessed night rest and you're ready to take on this day. Let us pray. Our Father, who art in heaven, I thank you for the blessings of your word, for the guidance that you give us, that we can be truly, dear Lord, peacemakers. I pray that you may bless us and continue to open our eyes and guide us, dear Lord, in how to live for thee. This is my prayer in Jesus' name. Amen. So I'm looking at this topic. As you know, this is a continued major discussion. And so I guess I'm sharing some stuff about mental health and how do you get to a point where you become so much wrapped up in darkness and in evil thoughts. And this is something that I think a lot of young men go through, a lot of people go through because of sin, I guess, and all of that. So I want to look at this topic here, major risk factors for gun violence. And I have an article to share and some thoughts to share on what's happening, what's going on in our society in general, and why we ought to take particular notes. So I start by reading Proverbs 20 verse 1. Proverbs 20 verse 1, as we look at major risk factors for gun violence and violence in general, it says in Proverbs 20 verse 1, wine is a mocker, strong drink is raging, and whosoever is deceived thereby is not wise. So as you know, there's the risk factors run the gamut. Some of it is philosophical, some of it is behavioral. Something you do will trigger a different behavior. This is something I witness for myself personally, seen others who, when they're under the influence of alcohol, how their behavior changes and how that becomes a risk factor. So you could have a person who is probably normal. They're probably not going to think about hurting a female, and yet they go on the alcohol, they start using the alcohol, and they beat the daylights out of a female. But when they're sober, I honestly believe they wouldn't do that in a sober mindset. So here goes a risk factor, just upfront. I throw out there to your risk factor that a person who is under the influence will do things that might be in a normal day. They would not be pushed to do it. And as you know, some of the risk factors that we're seeing, and it's not the sole cause, it's one of the cause. The cause, I think, are many cause, is drugs and alcohol. So we'll come back to that a little bit later. But when you look at any risk factor, you cannot eliminate drugs and alcohol, because a person might have some thoughts and tendency, but that drugs is like throwing drugs, to me, and alcohol is like throwing gasoline on an already existing problem. There's a fire there and you throw gasoline on it, it just blows it up. And so it is with a bunch of risk factors. Last week there was a case, I think it was last week, I was reading, and there's a case of a young lady that jumped out of an airplane. I think it was a Cessna airplane over Madagascar. This is this little island, or I don't know if it's a small island, but it's a big island on the southeast side of Africa. And there was a flight, and it's a small plane, and she had taken a malaria drugs, or anti-malaria drugs. And they say it seems like the malaria drugs could cause a side effect of suicidal ideation. Very fascinating. And so that's what they're hunting down to figure out if that's what caused it, because the story is that she took the drugs. And I'm saying all this up front, I hope I don't lose you, because there's a whole discussion that have come in on various different factors that accelerate or increase violence. And so, but I'm just saying this up front to give you an idea that there's so many different factors. So again, the person took the drug, and they say the plane took off, the pilot, put the plane up in the air. It's going up. He's making a sentence. He says about 3,600 feet in the air. And she got up without saying anything. But the passenger next to her says she was mumbling all the time, mumbling some stuff to herself. And then she got up, popped the door open, or opened the door, and went to jump out. And he grabbed her, hang on to her feet. The pilot realized what was going on, leveled the plane at 3,600 feet, and he says he's trying to hold on to her while trying to manage the plane. So it's obviously it's a small plane, and she's the whole time they said she said nothing. She just said nothing. She just struggled against them until she finally broke loose, and they still haven't found the body, and she was gone, 3,600 feet above sea level, and that was what happened. So this here is, and as again, it's a known factor for the drug, that it's supposed to help with malaria, but it cause violent tendency and also suicidal ideation, where the person keep thinking about killing themselves. So it might be that she had thought about killing herself before, but the drug just accelerates. It's like throwing gasoline on an already existing problem. And as I say, human beings have problems. Obviously, we're sinners, and at any given time, according to what I'm going to read here, everybody has some type of mental health problem. So I'm going to read this article just to get into it, but I wanted to throw this out there to you because some people believe it's just, I think it's a little bit more complex of a problem, and where you put together a few complexities in this life, you could come up with a result that is not pretty. And it's important for you and I to know these things, because we have to be able to watch ourselves, because there's people who will say, I didn't mean to beat this person. And they probably didn't mean to, but they have to know up front that alcohol will cause you to rage and to even hurt those you love. And it's important to know that if you want to keep loving them, probably it's a very good idea to remove from you alcohol and remove from you drugs that will push you to do things that you would not do to those you love. So there's a lot of people who have been dead and killed simply because of drugs and alcohol. So I'm going to go into this article here now. This is from NBC News, and it's trying to answer the question from interviewing various different professionals, mental health professionals, as to what is this thing with the violence going on. So the title of the article is "Mental Illness isn't a major risk factor for gun violence, but here's what is." And this is written by Kathleen Sullivan. Having access to a gun is more of a risk factor for violence than being diagnosed with a mental illness, research shows. So I'm going to read this in parts because, again, it's just, let me read it in parts, all right? You can always go and read it for yourself if you need to get it in one swoop. So here, first thing, this is something that I've observed in various different reports when it comes on to not so much gun violence, when it comes on to hurting others, but hurting oneself. That you could have a person there sitting here talking to you, and there's an example of a family who the son sat, talked to them, had dinner with them, and went upstairs, and within half an hour or less, it was less within minutes, he was dead. Because he had access to be able to, he had the thought of killing himself, and there's a gun, he just took the gun, very easy. It's that easy access. So notice that this concept will be repeated through the article. The thought might be there, but there's access. So it's definitely true that the access can bring on more behavior that probably you would think about it, but not want to carry it out. Continue reading here. It says that stand in stark contrast to a statement President Donald Trump made Monday in addressing the nation after this weekend mass shooting in Dayton, Ohio, and El Paso, Texas. Mental illness and hatred pulled the trigger, not the gun, Trump said. So most naturally, human being pulled the trigger. So there's some truth to that. Experts and lawmakers who are once again trying to make sense of what's drive gun violence in the United States, however, disagree about what role, if any, mental illness play. A mental illness diagnosis is not an evidence-based risk factor for risk of violence towards other people. 50% of Americans meet criteria for mental illness at some point in their lifetime, and most will not go on to commit violent crimes, says Beth McGinty, an associate professor of health policy and management at the Johns Hopkins Bloomberg School of Public Health. So I'll pause there. So most naturally, this is going to be one of the premises in the article. I, for one, believe that it is a contributing factor. I don't believe that there isn't anything. I'll read the article so you hear their evidence, but I believe it is some people when they start going crazy. As a matter of fact, this is what I believe. I believe that sometimes the thoughts of violence could help make you go mad. In other words, you could go down a rat hole in your brain, and that help mess up your brain and make you unbalanced. And then somebody will say you're mentally ill, if that makes sense. So I'll pause here again as an example. And I don't want to mess this article up too much by pausing and introducing too many secondary thought. But let's just hear this out, right? The guy that did the shooting in what's the place called, in Dayton, Ohio, over the weekend, he had an obsessive compulsive disorder. So that's a disorder, as you know, where the person is obsessed with repeat action. Like they'll be fascinated with watching fans, and the fans just go round and round, and they're fascinated by that, and they can't stop doing it. So that is a mental health disorder. And if you couple that with now a fascination to kill people, or a fascination to shoot guns or whatever, then that can become like a spiral problem. So it might not be the sole cause, but you can see where a person is fixated on one thing and can break the spell, so to speak, and how if they're fixated on the wrong thing, that could become a problem. Just want to throw that out there. So I do believe that mental illness is basically where something is going wrong in the mind, and that wrong thing could be a fascination with something or a recurring thought that a person can break. Because remember what they say is mental illness in a colloquially or at the street level. You would say mental illness is doing the same thing and expecting a different result. So that's mental illness for somebody on the street. Common sense way of looking at mental illness without the expert. Why is that? Because the person is doing something that's not going to work, and they can't break that spell. And so you would say, what's wrong with your brain, son? You don't see that what you're doing here not going to work. So somebody says, I'm going to start a race war. I'm going to go somewhere, I'm going to shoot somebody of the other race, and it's going to start a war. And you're like, yeah, you're mentally ill. Hey, but a bunch of people going to follow you. You're sick in your head. And if they follow you, they're sick too. Life don't work like that. One person. Normally you start a war by ideology. You infect a whole bunch of people's mind. So somebody said, well, what if their minds are infected, but not enough to create a race war? It's just them by themselves over there with their sickness. So there's mental illness, I think, part of it. But not in the sense of the person has depression and so they go kill themselves. I think the person could have a mental illness where they can't stop a recurring thought, and they keep thinking about violence. And somebody will say, well, the brain is sick, but it's sick in the sense of, it's like somebody saying perverted stuff all the time in that way. I'll just throw that out there. Continue reading now. Hopefully I don't throw anything much here after that. So according to the American Psychiatric Association, people with serious mental illness commit only about 3% of violent crimes. Routinely blaming mass shooting on mental illness is unfounded and stigmatizing, the association president Rosa Phillips Davis said in a statement Sunday in response to the shooting. The rate of mental illness are roughly the same around the world, yet other countries are not experiencing these traumatic events as often as we face them. One critical factor is access to and the lethality of and the weapons that are being used in these crimes. Adding racism, intolerance, and bigotry to the mix is a recipe for disaster. Wow, as I say, when I read this, I want to say this, that they're saying that is not a factor, but I do believe there's a certain level where if it's not a factor for mass shooting, and some people say it's a factor, some people say the moment you see a mass shooting, they say the person is mentally ill. But here's the thing, it might not be a factor, but you think about how many young men in the ghetto who are incarcerated, and if you look at incarceration numbers, you see that high percentage of the incarcerated have mental health problem, or they have some type of problem where they're on Prozac or Zoloft or some type of mental health drug. So there is such a thing. So the question is it the drug made them violent, or is the violence made them need drugs? Because oftentimes the teacher can control them, so they say, inject that boy and calm him down. But then one of the side effects of the drug is violence or suicide ideation. Just want to throw that out there because I think sometimes some of these things get muddied up depending on who you're dealing with. Because notice I said that we don't want to stigmatize. But if you think about it, when you have a school and there's a black kid, they're quick to say, well, he's out of control. Like, stigmatize him and let's drug him up. And let's watch him more with the police and stuff like that. Let's have more people up his, whatever, to watch him. But now you have these kids who, you look at them, obviously, when you see the pictures of them, that look like something is not right. And so the question is something not right, or is it the drugs that make them not right? Because a percentage of these young men are coming out that they were on drugs, some type of mental health drugs for anxiety, for depression, for a whole bunch of stuff. So is it the drugs caused them, or is it they just messed up and the drugs made it worse, or whatever it is? So that's why I say I have more to discuss. Just stick with me here. I'm getting somewhere. Additional research published by the APA found that problems with self-esteem and perceived social rejection are common characteristics among people who commit mass shooting. So I'm going to read it again for your brain because it's important. This is an important point that I agree with. Self-esteem and social rejection. So self-esteem, social rejection are common characteristics among people who commit mass shooting. So they're normally incel. They're normally rejected by the society. Don't click. They seem weird, seem like weirdos to the society, and they decided that everybody should die. Significant trauma over a period of time are another common experience among perpetrators of mass shooting, says what's his name, Dan Flannery, director of the Bigon Center for Violence Prevention at Case Western University. If you are going to do screening, you need to screen for multiple things, and mental health is only one of them, Flannery told NBC News. You need to understand what's going on and consider stress point, what happened at work, in domestic life, in social media activity. If someone belongs to a lot of hate groups on social media, that's a red flag. So that's an important point there. Other factors also play a role in everyday gun violence. Having access to gun coupled with certain personality trait is one such risk factor for gun violence, and a big one. According to a study published in April in the journal Preventative Medicine, people who have access to a gun are more than 18 times as likely to threaten someone compared to those without access to a gun. Right? So just keep that in mind. A certain personality trait including impulsivity, excessive anger, especially when a person displays outbursts of anger in public. These personality traits are also important to do violent crimes, and coupled with access to gun. The research from University of Texas Medical Branch found that people who are prone to hostility were more than 3 times more likely to threaten someone with a gun than others. The study also looked at how mental health symptoms relate to gun violence. The majority of mental health symptoms we examined include anxiety, depression, stress, PTSD, and borderline personality disorder were unrelated to gun violence, says lead study author Yu Lee, postdoctoral research fellow at the University of Texas Medical Branch. Also, what they found is a history of risky behavior, substance abuse, and a history of violence, especially domestic violence, are strong associated with gun violence. So the person is already shown some behavior. Problematic substance use, especially of alcohol, is a major risk factor that could influence whether a person will use a gun to commit a violent crime. According to reports from the Consortium of Risk Behavior Firearm Policy, an organization of researchers, practitioners, and advocates who develop gun violence prevention policy recommendation based on existing research. The best predictor of future risk or violent behavior in past behavior, McGinty, who was involved with the report, have multiple DUIs, DWIs, is one way to operationalizing that type of risk factor. So multiple substance abuse problems, drug and alcohol problems. Other problems, in fact, people who have been convicted of driving under the influence at least twice in a 5-year span were more likely to commit gun violence than a person with mental illness, the report found. A history of domestic violence and violent misdemeanors is also a red flag. If you want to screen for factors that might indicate people who are at risk of committing gun violence, it's these factors that suggest risk factors for future violence, not having mental illness. Having a mental illness is not a dangerous behavior. So very well said here. So at the end there, it says having a mental illness. So if somebody's depressed, it's not necessarily that this is going to end, that they're going to be going out there and shooting people in a nursing home or in a daycare. A person who having some type of episode of whatever, not necessarily a risk factor. Person could even suicide ideation and probably not necessarily have a risk factor to go do something. But if you're having a thought and then you have access, then it's going to be much easier. So I'm going to go over some of this article real quickly here. I know I started commenting on some of it because I just wanted to throw some of this out because I know I want to talk about some of the stuff that it came up in the beginning. So back to midway through it, it says additional research by the APA found that problem with self-esteem and perceived social rejection are common characteristics among people who commit mass shooting. Now that's important because you've heard me talk about this here, that if you notice, quite a few of the people majority of the people who are doing mass shooting are normally viewed as outcasts. So they'd have problems in school, becoming part of the main line of school or the main groups of school, and or they're in regular society. They finish school and they're basically not fitting in. They're not part of the hip crowd. They're not part of the crowd. And this either self-esteem issue or perceived rejection normally kind of paint a very clear picture, a high percentage of those who will commit violent crimes. But that again could stigmatize somebody who is in this category, but they're not necessarily going to be violent. There's a lot of people that you come across during your everyday life that they are part of this, but they're not committing violent crimes. But at least this here is a little indication, because so far the large majority of the people feel like they're outcasts. And I could see why a person now who feels like they're outcasts and they feel like they're they're not part of society could start to blame people who could find a target for people who are like blacks or Latinos or minorities. And if the president tell them, because all these people I believe follow the president, so they could believe that, oh yeah, this is the source of my problem. These people, these are what I'm socially outcast. Not thinking they're probably in a white community and they're socially outcast in that community, and the problem is not with some foreigner or stuff like that. And I might say also that most of the mass murderers kill people in their own community. The majority of them don't go outside and kill people from other ethnic groups. They're just killing their locals. So that's important. Most of them won't drive 660 miles to El Paso from their home to go kill people who are foreigners or poor. So I say that, at least for now, that's what the numbers seem to be bearing out. So self-esteem problem and perceived social rejection often is going to be within the local setting. If I'm in a community and people reject me in my community, then I probably dislike the people in my community. And notice they normally go, as I've noticed over the years, if you look at all these things, they go where people are happy, or they just do it right where they're at, which is the social rejection probably happened to them in school, right in their school classroom. So they take it out on those in their own school. So that's important. It's one factor. We're just going through a list of factors here that tend, like just like a profiler, tend to paint a very good picture as before we finish. You'll see. So the self-esteem problem, perceived social rejection, is common among people. I think this is a big one, very common. You can kind of tell because the person probably have some social awkwardness, but not everybody. Because I say I've known people very loving, very nice when you get to meet them, very pleasant, but they're very awkward. And socially, people want to be with people who are hip and cool, and that tend to kind of push them in the background, in the back. But it's definitely that's just another risk factor that thoughts run my mind and thoughts leave. They'll come back. Significant trauma over a period of time is another common experience among perpetrators of mass shooting. And I think this trauma could be a bunch of trauma. As I say, somebody who's socially awkward probably is bullied in school. Quite a few of these kids, they say, were bullied. I remember Jared Loeffner, he complained that, he couldn't get certain girls. He didn't have the sex drive as, say, the black man has. He seemed to be an outcast, and he seemed to have a problem with that. And he took it out on some black people. So there is that element there again, that if you look past the blackness, you start to realize it is that element that sometime in life, if you're not doing as good, you start looking at those that are doing good and start to have like a hatred build up for them. If you notice, many of these young men talking about the social problem and also the period of violence, some of them view themselves as incel, that they're forced to be celibate because all the hot girls go with the hot guys, and so they're left by themselves. And that perceived slight is taken out with violence. As I said, at first I remember when looking at gun violence, mass murders especially, it seemed at first as if it was irrational. But then the more you look at it, the more you realize it is crazy, but it has a rational line to it. In other words, it's not, I don't agree with it, but I start to see, there's a pattern. And from the pattern, you start to get, there's a perceived slight. And from the perceived slight, they start to see these people as being a source of their pain, and that they should feel pain also. And they give it to them. I give it to them brutally. That's why I remember when the Las Vegas shooting happened, I think at first he had joked people because this guy was a multi-millionaire, it seems. He was very rich. I don't know, either one or the other, I can't remember. I think he was a multi-millionaire. And he but he seemed to be a social recluse. He ended up with I think a female from Philippines. A Filipino he ended up with. A lot of time guys who are in that type of setting end up with some foreigners because the girls back home not going with them. So they'll end up like that. And so you can see probably there's a long-term slight. And he said, I'm going to give it to them. And he gave it to them. It's a tough thing. So it's a period of trauma. And that trauma ends with violence. Makes no sense, but it makes sense. If someone belongs to a lot of hate groups on social media, that's a red flag. Obviously, hate, and it's something that is not a major factor, because if you look at it, nothing that is said here so far contradicts each other. I'm not talking about the beginning part of the article. I'm talking about this part. Think about that. If someone belongs to a hate group because the person has reason to hate on society, hate on this. Cause I remember a few years back, I used to watch Alex Jones. Never watched him, I should say. Let me not say it like that. People would give me his videos and I'll look at it and think, this guy here, this crazy guy here again. And for all the years I've ever watched Alex Jones, I always thought he worked for the CIA. That's what I believe. He was part of the employment. He was employed by the CIA. That's what I believe. I still believe that. So I would see people, these Adventists would give you these conspiracy stuff. And so I ignored. And then when I saw him again on YouTube, I said, yeah, that's that guy. I remember people gave me his video. And I remember looking at it, and at first I was like, man, this is. I thought he was acting, and later on he said he was acting, and I always thought he was acting. It was like a shell for some organization. But then when I came to the comment section quite a few years back, when I started really looking into all this gun violence and stuff, I was shocked. I was actually surprised because I thought most people thought it was like a show. It's like a talent show or some type of joke show. Only to realize they took him serious, and it's always these young men again. So I realized there's a whole subset of our culture that take people like that serious, but people like Alex Jones and the pro-gun people, I don't believe none of them is real. I believe most of them are fake. I think some of them might be real, but a little bit. I think most of them are fake. These are these guys that look like they wake up and the first thing they do, I wake up, the first thing I do, I pray. But, I realize these young men, the people who do these videos online, these YouTube gun, pro American. In my mind, I always imagine the first thing they wake up, they walk over from the side of the bed and they hug the flag. And that's how they start the day. It's just weird, but I don't believe it's real. I believe it's fake. But that's how they pretend like that's what it is, and they fool up these young men. And I believe a large part of these young men they're fooling up is these young men that are into like mass murders and stuff, because it's a fake patriotism. It's this patriotism, like, when they see a flag they get all excited sensually. It's weird. So this is noticed there. It's a large amount of them belong to hate groups. That's a red flag. And I believe part of the easy why it's so easy for them in that situation to belong to a hate group, is because, think about it, if you get up every day and you're being stimulated to hate and to hate and pride, but yet the society reject you, and you're thinking you are the best thing that society has. So you have this whirlwind of a confusion in your head. It's easy to belong to a hate group because you've been slighted, and as you belong to a hate group, you can have commonality with other people who have hate. So keep that in mind. So to me, it's not the hate group, it's the hate, and it's the encouragement of the hate. Another thing I want to read here, two pieces here in this section. It says, according to a study published in April of the Journal of Preventive Medicine, people who have access to a gun are more than 18 times as likely to threaten someone compared to those without gun access. This is important. I think it's a big thing. This is something that I could have told you when I was in my teenage years as a young man coming up. And what that is that I would observe this amongst my friends. I had one or two friends I know they always had a knife on them, no matter what it is. And in their mind, it wasn't for peeling oranges, but that's what they use it for. That would be the excuse if they ever run into the police or something like that. Yeah, I can buy orange and peel it or stuff like that. And I notice is that, if I'm by myself and something happened, you kind of back the situation down, you calm it down, or you don't start an escalation. But when I was around them, I noticed that they would start escalation. They would start escalating stuff, and they would push on stuff because in their mind they're ready to stop somebody. So it is something I observe. It is not like I need a researcher to tell me this. This is something I would observe with my friends, the ones that I remember. They would always have a knife on them. It is, if something goes on, and it's hard for them to say, look, I'm sorry, man. All right, it's all right. Enjoy your day. They will take it from 0 to 100 real fast, and they're ready to go. And the person might believe, oh, they're gonna fight. They ain't gonna fight. They're gonna stop somebody. And after a while, you start becoming leery of them because you start to realize you start to say, man, this is my friend, but he caused that problem. He caused that problem. That problem didn't have to go like that. And he might justify himself, and you might, the person did want to fight, but the person wouldn't want to fight if you didn't push it on. So important to note, and this is a very important point. because I can do something to those who rejected me in society. I can do something to those who don't like me. And as I say, we're looking over major risk factors for gun violence. It is easy, if I get into an argument with a family member, you could just walk away. But now I have a gun. I feel like I want to kill this person, and I can go get the gun and kill. I can retrieve the gun and kill this person. I don't know about you, but I know what it's like to be in a human body, to experience anger, that you're so mad. You're so mad. And if you were one of these people who, when you get mad, you start throw a temper tantrum and start breaking up stuff, I think you run the risk of go killing people, because you can't control your emotions. You can blank out and stab somebody or shoot somebody. So having that access makes it worse, And somebody say, "Oh yeah, but people every now and then will kill people with knives or with hatchet or axe and stuff like that." But I think with guns, sometimes people fiddle with that thing, and they idealize it, and it's becoming part of their thinking too much. One has to back oneself down and say, "Look, I need to stay away from that thing." Personality trait, including impulsive and excessive anger, especially when a person displays outbursts of anger in public setting or at work. Because normally what people do in a home setting is always more what they do in the public setting. But when a person starts to lose control of themselves in the public, something is wrong. Like the guy in Dayton, Ohio, he had a hit list, and that's a giveaway. How is a person like that is able to buy a gun legally, who is certified by the secular police system? There's no other system but the secular police. But anyhow, by the police system, he's certified that he had a hit list and a rape list. He has a hit list and a rape list. Now, who you think he probably want to rape and kill? It's the people who rejected him because he probably was a nerd. It's the people who probably made fun of him and abused him, because people can be abusive. They'll make fun of you. And one thing I know about for years of being in church is that they'll gang up on you and isolate you and try to beat you up. And if you're not strong, they'll beat you up. And often people would want, like in past, I remember people would say, "Why do you come across sometimes in an aggressive way?" Because they'll abuse you. You have to protect yourself. And if you don't know to, they'll back you up in a corner, per se, socially. And they'll torture you. There's a torturers we have. I thought the torturers was just at the playground or in kindergarten, in the lower grades. But whereas even when you graduate, there's people who are torturers. And in a lot of churches, that's what they practice, torture. Another thing here, found that people who are prone to hostility were more than 3 times more likely to threaten someone with a gun. See, that's a giveaway also. Somebody threatening somebody with a gun, you know that. That's a giveaway. Substance abuse and a history of violence, especially domestic violence, are strongly associated with gun violence. So substance abuse, as I started out the article, that something can push you down this road. Again, wine is a marker and strong drink is raging. They also say having multiple DUIs, it can be an indication that a person will do gun violence. You often see sometimes a police pull over a person. A DUI person can be more violent. The person don't have no control over themselves. And so they have no control over themselves. It's easy for them to burst out in wrath. Some more thoughts here. Remember, they say belonging to multiple hate group. I think because the question has been asked, and I don't know if you've been paying attention to the media, and it's been asked over the years, because this is, although President Trump is pushing certain rhetoric, these gun violence were happening in President Bush, in President Obama, and President Trump. So these things been going on. What is synonymous with gun violence is America. America, they say, does about 34% of all the world mass murders. That means 4 more people get shot at one given time. And America has only 5% of the world population. So a disproportionate amount of gun violence, mass murders, I should say, happen in America. Now, important to note, all I'm talking about here, we're talking about the ones that are the major mass murders. But remember, some of the mass murders happen in black communities also. But they're there normally for different reasons. See, in the black community all the time is these 2 guys having a beef, 2 gangs. And one group go over there, shot somebody, the group come over here, and they go, let's say, at a cookout. And they start to just light everybody up at the cookout. And then you have for more people dying. They say that's a mass murder. The other one is that the guy doesn't have a beef. At first, I didn't think they had a beef. I just thought they just do it randomly per se, which is still random. But they had a beef with society and with their outcastness and their lack of having a girlfriend. It's some beef. And they go and take out a whole bunch of innocent people. One seems stranger than the other, but it is mass murder nonetheless. So notice here an environment that encourages hate. So that would be something that is going to come up on the radar. The person already have hate, and they either join a hate group or they in a societal setup like what happened in, I believe, in some of these black communities, where hate is something that is fomented, is something that is encouraged, is something that is just part of the music they listen to. Something is feeding that hate. Whatever it is hate for those guys because they're the Bloods or the Crips. It's anything that feeds hate often will end up in murder. The first murder was because of hate. It's because of somebody feel like they were wronged. And when you understand murder, you understand this is a major factor. Domestic violence is the person feel like they have a right and the right's been taken away. They were wrong. They were wronged. So environment. So this is now where the part where now the question is the president pushing on this hate? Probably not for all domestic violence, not domestic violence, but all mass murders. Most of them no. But when you have a mass murderer saying, because these people are invading our country, so we need to murder them, then that would be now you being encouraged. But I don't believe it's just the president. I believe it's people. And if you go online, I watch quite a few of this stuff. You know, if you watch some of the clips, I don't sit and watch Fox News, but I watch some of the clips, and straight from their YouTube channel, and you watch some of the stuff that some of these YouTubers put out. It really gets this part of the community going. That it's the Hispanic, it's the foreign blacks, I guess, the Asians, it's the Muslim, and so basically now I can say the reason why I can't get a girlfriend, the reason why I can't succeed in life, the reason why I'm social. You can start putting all your problems on this group, because that's what the president is saying to you. If you lost your job and GM or Ford ship your job abroad, you can say it's because the illegal immigrants coming in to pick tomatoes. That's what caused you to lose your job making cars. It's easy to do that. And especially if a mind is not too mature, because it's in the teens, late teens, early 20s, and it's immature, you'll fall for that rhetoric. That's why that rhetoric is hate speech and dangerous. So it is with these hate groups. I've been on 8chan, but I've been on the Daily Stormer. When you go on the Daily Stormer, it is amazing the things that they talk about. It is like eye-opening in the way Eve got her eye open, not in a positive way. It's very negative. And you can see why somebody, they feed themselves all day long, they could start thinking, it's these people why I can't progress in life. I need to kill them. So in any environment, if you listen to music all day long, if you watch Quentin Tarantino movies all day long, they might say, oh, it's just theatric. It's not theatric. You're feeding yourself violence. And that's the next thing that I want to say here. An environment that encourages violence will result in certain violence. And I think the violence is more appropriate here in America, because somebody said, well, why is this not happening so much in Russia or Korea or Japan? They play violent video games. Because I think the machismo, tough guy mentality is not so much a requirement. Like if you look at, if you interact with all the Asians, there's that Asian guy that, he's probably like the mafia type of mafia, it's into kung fu martial arts and stuff like that. But I don't see, that could be wrong, but I don't see it as the main glorification in the society there. You have to be a hard, tough guy. Is not from what I've observed. It is, I don't know if they love that, but it don't seem like they glorify it. As a matter of fact, you think about it, all of these mass murderers, they tend to follow things like WWF, WWE, the worldwide wrestling, fake wrestling, you know what I'm talking about. Think about that. I was reading out a piece a few months back with the man, I can't remember his name, but it's this main guy that he's trying to push. He's the most famous right now, I think, outside of The Rock. Dwayne the Rock, but is a white guy that's very famous for pushing wrestling, and he's trying to push wrestling in China. He says it's very difficult in China because in China they don't have the. It's this huge market that they want to get into, but they don't have. He say in China, the philosophy that we have in the Western world of a boogeyman, of the bad guy and the good guy. He said that narrative don't sell well there. But it says in America, we have this narrative that these are the bad guys and these are the good guys. And that's the narrative. The bad guys are fighting against the good guys. And it's in our superhero movies, it's in whatever. So think about it. If you have a narrative, so he's saying it's been very difficult to get it in there, but they're working hard to try to teach them that narrative, you know. And think, so you're this big, over the top man filled with muscle, and you go to an area and all of the men, all of the women, they're not like that physically. You know, you think about, you come back to America, these women with big breasts, big butts. I don't know if they have big butts here, but you know, it depends. You know, you can put the butt implant and stuff. And you go back there and it's not like that. Neither male nor female. It is accentuated over the top stuff. So I think the environment here is different from, you know, when it comes on to male machismo, male, you know, brutish behavior. It's something that is glorified, and then the female side of it, which is over the top, voluptuous, and all that. But you know, that type of environment, I don't know if it is as sold or it's existing. From what I've been hearing, it's not as big in the Asian countries as it is in America among blacks and whites. It is something, and I think that is also encouraging. And wish you have a quick way to communicate to me, so you could tell me what you think. But that's what I think is encouraging, the violence, you know, this over-the-top cowboy movie. And then Quentin Tarantino continue with this cowboy movie, non-stop violence, there's dead bodies everywhere. And a lot of these young men who are shooting up the place now, because you say, how does this have to do with these young men? These young men shooting up the place, they're trying to live up to that ideal. And it's difficult because if especially if you're outcast, you're nerdish, blah, 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 you don't physically probably dominant in your physicality, how are you going to prove to be the biggest, toughest guy to cause people to scream and shout and run from you? Shoot them up. How are you going to be the guy that is like The Rock? You'll never be The Rock in that scenario. So you're going to have to get a gun and start blowing people away. That's the only way you're going to get excited about being a manly, tough guy. You're going to be like Rambo, but on innocent people and kids. And I think that's not probably the mentality in Asian countries from what I see. You think about Indians. It is amazing. Their movies are about singing and dancing. it is almost crazy in comparison to the big blockbusters in America. It's about violence and gun and the biggest, toughest, baddest guy. And who will be left out of that? A weaker person. That's a nerd. You think about the black community, it's just filled with violence and who's a tough black guy, you know? And I think that's part of the uniqueness of America. When you go to India and they're singing and dancing, you'd be like, yeah, that's crazy. Why are they doing that? It's totally different environment and culture. So the environment, an environment that encourages dominance and brute force, I think is part of what's unique. I don't know if that culture is fully in Africa. I've not observed Africans to be like that. Africans tend to, when you see them, they tend to not be like that. I'm talking about black Americans or people from the Caribbean or people from South America. I'm talking about people from Africa. When I run into them, I tend not to get across from the male or the female that conceptualization of life, that view of life. When I went to, lived for the time I lived in England, I didn't feel like that was the dominant part of the culture, but in America, it's the biggest, baddest guy, and he gets the chicks, and the chick is the chick with the biggest breasts, the biggest butts, the facial stuff done to her. It's, I don't know if people from Sweden or Norway, which is, I think Norway is one of the next big area for mass murders. I don't know if Russia that's the whole cell. Think about one of the most famous guys from Russia right now is the MMA fighter. And if you look at him, he don't fit the bill. as like a Vladimir Klitschko from Ukraine, big 6 foot something, white guy. It's not the mentality, and I'm thinking it's part of it. But in America, we glorify the box office hit. It's gonna be two big old bad guys killing everybody, beating everybody. And if you're a 5'5" guy, you're just not American. You're not like apple pie because you don't look like Dwayne the Rock, or I can't remember the other guy. But I've seen them and I'm thinking that's what you sell. And you're looking at the audience, and I've been fascinated by this because you see the audience of the people following that, and it's wimpy, puny people. And then, but you think about Korea, South Korea, North Korea. You think about those. That's not the sell. So I think it's something unique to our culture. The use of drugs and alcohol. America is the drug capital of the world when it comes on to usage. It doesn't mean other countries don't use drugs. It's just we glorify it here. It is part of our culture. Everybody's cracking out and smoking out and stuff like that. But as I said, drugs and alcohol make people either suicidal or violent. And that's just the reality. So this is part of, to me, why. Because the question people are asking, and this is what I'm trying to explore this morning here. What is it that's going on in people's head? Why they will just want little young kindergarten kids to be filled with bullets? Because think about it, the guy that went in Newtown and shoot up that, I think it's a kindergarten. No, it wasn't kindergarten. I think it was, primary school, whatever it was. Who is he going to beat up? He couldn't step up to me and beat me up or you up. Even if you probably no female on here who would be able to do that too, physically, just by himself. But he could beat up some kids, so you go there and go shoot them up. That's all he's gonna beat up. But this is a sickness in the mind of wanting to do that. But where's that coming from? And I think it's part of the culture. It is this philosophy that's in the culture that makes this happen. A negative environment that does not make you feel comfortable to be poor or not winning. See, you come to make it in America. And so there's some countries you go to, if you're poor or whatever, you ain't gonna kill yourself. But to me, there's this fascination here that we're in a country that a person not doing too well financially, they feel like losers. As a matter of fact, I believe there's a major part of this is not just the idea that you come to make it in America, but this fascination, I think, is in America. They say, hey, look, we superior. I think this is the worst stigma to put up on a person. You hear me talk about this before, and I'm telling you, the more I think about it, the more it blows my mind. Imagine if from a child somebody told you you're superior. I think that's the biggest mess, because guess what happened? That's not reality. And there's some people, if I tell them that, they'll be like mad as ever, because for them, it's something that they've been inculcated with. And you must win. And you can't be below. You must be above. But you look at the profile and the pictures and the background stories of the young men doing these mass murders. They're not winning. But so is a lot of people around the world, but those people not go killing a bunch of people. And those people are not feeling like they need to commit suicide. They just keep living their life. I grew up with young men that they weren't winning. And you see them, they're happy as ever. Just going to the beach, just bumming out, being a beach bum and doing their thing. They're not like, man, tomorrow I'm going to kill myself. But so for years I've been trying. I said, why would it be now they would want to kill themselves? Because I know people not going on for them. And they're not going to ever get married. They're whatever. And they probably involuntary celibate. I grew up with people who were involuntary celibate, but I never thought about it. And I never see them going and start to spray people with bullets. But I realized when you have an ideation, a teaching that tells you that you're supposed to be the winner. You have this thing where you're watching WWF and you're watching, we're going to dominate. And I'm like, man, you ain't dominating nothing. All you're going to dominate this morning is your plate of food that you're going to eat for breakfast. And that's okay. But we have a society saying it's not. And you're supposed to be the winner. Because that's the other thing I thought about. That it might not be so that this concept of, exceptionalism, that if you're American, you're exceptional. you're the world leader, you're the world dominant, you're the superior, all this type of stuff. I'm not thinking probably they're teaching that to Russians or to Koreans or to people from the African continent or people from various parts of Europe. But imagine if that's all you're taught and nothing going on for you. You're broke as a church mouse. I think this can lead to violent outbursts. Evil philosophy is another thing that I think is causing this. Evil philosophy. When you have that evil philosophy, as I said before, I covered yesterday, like of evolution, that you're survival of the fittest, you dominate by violence, and that's what you dominate. You don't dominate by scientific endeavor, by your effort, by your wisdom, by ingenuity. You dominate by beating up people. I think that's an evil philosophy. That's part of the culture. And it has worked because America has a very unique place in the world for domination based upon violence, starting with slavery, then Jim Crow law, and, war and drugs to incarcerate and create a prison industrial complex. All the various different wars started by the CIA to dominate other countries. So you have an environment in the country that tells you dominate by violence. And I think this is a blowback from all that evil that we have sent across the world. And now it's coming back home because the ideology is in our young men. Because the question is why these young men have these ideology, because it's here in America. I don't think it's in India or Pakistan per se. They have probably other evil ideology. Now the important thing is fascination with gun and violence. As I say, it is, look at the top 10 box office hit in the last year, just this year alone. Look at the top box office hit. And probably one or two of them is something other Disney. Oh, it's so cute. And even other Disney, when you get it, what's Disney narrative? It's good over evil. It's not, you take care of you and I take care of me. You do your best in life, or you probably end up with, a few assets and stuff like that. You're okay. You're fine. This person do their best in life. They end up as a multimillionaire. They're fine also. No, it's we gonna dominate. We the best. We the greatest. Like, who the best? And then you're like, I'm not the best. I'm gonna be the best. I'm gonna be the best mass murderer. I think that's where the problem is. Partaking of evil and violence all day long. I do believe that these violent video games are part of the problem. Because one thing if you're playing the violent video game is another thing if you have an AK-47 or AR-15 right next to you and you have a hit list of people who did you wrong and girls that wouldn't even give you the time of the day, laugh at your face. Imagine you go up to a girl, and you see this happened to people all the time. When I was growing up, I remember I had a friend who would say, watch this. And I'm like, okay, let's watch this. And then you go and talk to a girl and she just back him down. And then he get mad. He get mad as ever. And I'm like, man, you see, I wasn't saying watch this, so they weren't abusing me. But he would go say, watch this, and he go over. So I'm watching, and I'm quietly watching. She don't know that I'm watching. And then she'll back him down. And then he'll get mad, like he want to fight. And I'm like, I'm not suffering that mental torture because I'm not trying to, talk like that. But he didn't know that what you probably do is don't try to go up to her, approach her, just talk to her, but hey, look at that thing over there, and have a conversation, and then slowly worm your way into the situation. But the easier, oh yeah, I'm the man. I'll be like, you get back down. People are like, man, get on my face. And then when I get violent because the person disrespect. And that's kind of what I'm saying is you like, you who want to date somebody that seems like a weirdo and talking about mass murders and stuff like that. People guess you scare people off. But I think it's this, notice almost all the mass murders, they study other mass murders and they want to one up the mass murder. They want to be better than the next mass murderer because they want to inflict greater punishment to say, yeah, I'm the biggest, baddest mass murderer. But Christ here teaches different to close. He says simply here, it says, blessed are the meek, for they shall inherit the earth. Blessed are they which do hunger and thirst after righteousness, for they shall be filled. Blessed are the merciful, for they shall obtain mercy. Blessed are the pure in heart, for they shall see God. Blessed are the peacemakers, for they shall be called the children of God. Everything that I just discussed a while ago, the violence, the hate, the dominance, the brute force, the alcohol, the drugs, the winning, can't accept even losing, the evil philosophies, the fascination with gun and violence, the partaking of evil all day long, is not of the Lord. This is why it ended in darkness and the devil is in charge of their mind to go murder innocent people. Because all of this, I think, is a soup that we mix in a cauldron and we're feeding our young people, and it's ending very violently in all communities in our society. It is just so much violence in every community that is unbelievable, but it's unbelievable the amount of darkness and violence we feed these young kids. And by the time they reach 18, 19, 20, they just blow up on us. Because why? It's a lot of violence in our community. It's very violent entertainment, violent everything. So I pray to God that we might be like Christ and we might be blessed. Be a blessed peacemaker. Let us pray. Thank you, O Lord, for your blessings towards us. Thank you for calling us out of this mindset to partake of all this evil day by day, and not feeding our mind with hate, but forgiving those who wrong us and forgiving those who didn't do us right or those who disrespected us. May you bless us, dear Lord, that we might truly love our neighbor as ourselves. This is my prayer in Jesus' name. Amen. Thanks for being with me here on Revive Reform Radio. Looking forward to talking to you again live tomorrow morning, where we should talk about current events. Until then, I pray that you may continue to walk with the King.